Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Learning Conversations. I'm Aurora, and today I have a very special guest who can help us with one of the biggest challenges English learners face. Rachel, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, Aurora. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm Rachel, and I'm from the United States, but I've been living and teaching around the world for over 20 years. I'm an English teacher and language coach who specializes in helping people develop fluency and speak English automatically without having to translate in their heads. I've worked with thousands of students from different countries, and I understand the struggle of wanting to speak English naturally and confidently. I'm really excited to share some strategies today that can help your listeners speak English without thinking so much.
That's exactly what so many English learners want to achieve, Rachel. I think most people learning English have experienced that frustrating moment when they know what they want to say in their native language, but they can't get it out quickly in English. Let's start with the basics. What does it mean to speak English without thinking?
Great question, Aurora. When I say speaking without thinking, I don't mean speaking without any thought at all. What I mean is speaking English automatically, the same way you speak your native language. In your first language, you don't translate each word in your head before speaking. You don't pause to remember grammar rules. The words just flow naturally because your brain has developed automatic patterns. Speaking English without thinking means developing these same automatic patterns in English so that common phrases, responses, and expressions come out naturally without mental translation or hesitation.
That sounds amazing, but also quite difficult to achieve. Rachel, why do English learners often get stuck translating in their heads instead of speaking directly in English?
This is completely natural and happens to almost every language learner. When we first learn English, we build vocabulary and grammar knowledge through our native language. We learn that dog means whatever word for dog exists in our language. We learn grammar rules by comparing them to our native language patterns. This creates a habit of mental translation because our brain takes the path it knows. Think in native language, translate to English, then speak. The problem is that translation takes time and mental energy, making conversation slow and exhausting. Also, many concepts don't translate directly between languages, which causes confusion and errors.
I definitely recognize that pattern in my own English learning journey. Rachel, what's the difference between knowing English and being able to use English fluently in conversation?
This is such an important distinction. Knowing English means understanding vocabulary, grammar rules, and being able to read and write with time to think. It's like having a dictionary and grammar book in your head. Using English fluently means being able to access that knowledge quickly and automatically in real-time conversation. Many students know a lot of English but struggle with fluency because they haven't practiced enough automatic recall. It's similar to the difference between knowing how to drive a car in theory versus actually driving smoothly in traffic. Fluency requires developing muscle memory for language patterns, not just intellectual understanding.
That's a helpful analogy. Rachel, what are some key strategies for developing automatic English speech patterns?
There are several effective strategies, but the most important one is massive input with repetition. You need to hear the same phrases, expressions, and sentence patterns many times until they become automatic. Listen to English podcasts, audiobooks, TV shows, and movies repeatedly. Don't just listen once, listen to the same content multiple times until you can predict what speakers will say next. Practice shadowing, which means listening to English audio and trying to speak along with it at the same time. This trains your mouth muscles and speech rhythm. Also, focus on chunks of language, whole phrases and expressions, rather than individual words.
Shadowing sounds like an interesting technique. Can you explain more about how to practice it effectively?
Absolutely. Shadowing is one of the most powerful techniques for developing automatic speech. Start with content that's slightly below your current level so you can follow along more easily. Choose audio with clear pronunciation. News broadcasts, audiobooks, or language learning materials work well. Listen to a short segment first to understand the meaning, then play it again and try to speak along with the speaker, matching their rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation as closely as possible. Don't worry about understanding every word. Focus on the sound patterns and rhythm. Start with 30-second segments and gradually increase the length. Practice this daily for 10 to 15 minutes, and you'll notice your speaking rhythm becoming more natural.
That sounds very practical. Rachel, what role does thinking in English play in developing automatic speech?
Thinking in English is crucial for developing fluency. When you think in English, you're creating direct neural pathways between thoughts and English words, bypassing your native language completely. Start small by narrating simple daily activities in your head. For example, while making coffee, think, I'm putting water in the kettle. Now I'm turning on the stove. The water is heating up. Gradually expand to describing your feelings, plans, and opinions in English. When you have conversations with yourself in English, you're practicing without pressure, which helps build confidence and automaticity. Some people even find it helpful to argue with themselves in English or practice explaining concepts they understand well.
I love the idea of having conversations with myself. Rachel, how important is pronunciation and rhythm in developing automatic speech?
Pronunciation and rhythm are absolutely essential. English has a very specific rhythm and stress pattern that's different from most other languages. When your pronunciation and rhythm are off, your brain has to work extra hard to produce speech, which slows down automaticity. Focus on sentence stress, emphasizing the important words and reducing the small function words like the, a, is, to. Practice connected speech where words flow together naturally. For example, want to becomes wanna in casual speech, and going to becomes gonna. Record yourself speaking and compare it to native speakers. Don't aim for perfection, but work on the overall rhythm and flow of English.
That makes sense. Rachel, what about dealing with the fear of making mistakes? How does this fear affect automatic speech?
Fear of mistakes is one of the biggest barriers to fluent speech. When you're worried about making errors, your brain activates its monitoring system, which slows down speech production significantly. You start second guessing every word and grammar choice, which prevents automatic flow. The truth is, making mistakes is absolutely normal and necessary for language learning. Native speakers make mistakes too. Focus on communication rather than perfection. Practice in low pressure situations first. Talk to yourself, record voice messages, or find patient conversation partners who understand your learning. Remember that most communication errors don't actually prevent understanding, so perfect grammar isn't required for successful communication.
That's really reassuring advice. Rachel, how can learners build confidence to speak more automatically?
Building confidence requires both mental and practical preparation. Mentally, accept that mistakes are part of learning and that communication is more important than perfection. Practically, prepare by having ready-made phrases for common situations. Memorize responses to frequent questions like, how are you? What do you do for work? Where are you from? Having these automatic responses reduces cognitive load and gives you confidence in conversations. Practice positive self-talk in English. Instead of saying, my English is terrible, say, I'm improving every day, or I can communicate my ideas. Celebrate small victories and focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do yet.
Those automatic responses sound very helpful for building confidence. Rachel, what's the role of listening in developing automatic speech?
Listening is absolutely fundamental. You cannot speak what you haven't heard many times. Your brain needs to internalize the sound patterns, rhythm, and intonation of English before it can produce them automatically. But here's the key. It needs to be active, focused listening, not just background noise. Choose listening materials slightly below your level so you can understand most of the content without subtitles. Listen to the same content multiple times to reinforce patterns. Pay attention to how native speakers connect ideas, how they pause, and what expressions they use frequently. Listening trains your ear and creates a mental database of natural English patterns that your brain can access when speaking.
That makes perfect sense. Rachel, how can learners practice when they don't have English speakers around them to talk to?
This is a common challenge, but there are many ways to practice alone. First, have conversations with yourself out loud about daily topics. Describe what you're doing, what you see, what you're thinking about. Practice explaining things you know well, like your job, hobby, or hometown. Record yourself having both sides of a conversation. Ask yourself questions and then answer them. Use voice messaging apps to send messages to yourself or language exchange partners. Practice presentations on topics you're passionate about. Read dialogues from textbooks out loud with expression. Even talking to your pets, plants, or reflection in the mirror can help. The key is getting your mouth muscles used to producing English sounds and patterns.
Those are creative ways to practice. Rachel, what about grammar? How important is perfect grammar for automatic speech?
This might surprise some learners, but perfect grammar is not essential for automatic speech. Native speakers actually make grammar mistakes regularly in casual conversation and still communicate perfectly well. The goal is effective communication, not grammatical perfection. However, you do need to internalize basic grammar patterns so they become automatic. Instead of memorizing grammar rules, focus on learning grammar through patterns and examples. For instance, instead of memorizing the rule for present perfect tense, learn common phrases like I've been, I've never, have you ever until they become automatic. Grammar should serve communication, not hinder it.
That takes some pressure off. Rachel, how long does it typically take to develop automatic speech patterns?
The timeline varies greatly depending on several factors: your starting level, how much you practice, the quality of your practice, and your language learning background. However, most learners start noticing some automatic responses within a few weeks of focused practice. Simple greetings and common expressions might become automatic quickly. More complex conversation skills typically take several months to a year of consistent practice. The key word here is consistent. Practicing 30 minutes daily is much more effective than practicing 3 hours once a week. Remember that language learning isn't linear. You'll have good days and challenging days. Some patterns will click immediately while others take longer. Be patient with yourself and focus on gradual progress rather than perfection.
Consistency really seems to be the key theme. Rachel, what are some specific exercises or activities that help develop automatic speech?
There are many effective exercises. Rapid response drills are excellent. Have someone ask you questions quickly and practice answering without pausing to think. If you're alone, write questions on cards and practice quick responses. Story retelling helps too. Listen to short stories and then retell them in your own words without looking at the text. Substitution drills work well. Take a sentence like, I went to the store, and practice substituting different words. I went to the bank, she went to the store, we went to the restaurant. Role-playing common situations like ordering food, asking for directions, or making appointments helps automate practical language. Tongue twisters improve pronunciation and mouth muscle memory. And daily English journaling, speaking your thoughts out loud as you write, combines thinking and speaking practice.
Those exercises sound very practical. Rachel, how can learners maintain motivation when progress feels slow?
Motivation is crucial for long-term success. First, set realistic expectations. Automatic speech develops gradually, not overnight. Celebrate small victories like using a new expression naturally or having a conversation without translating. Keep a language learning journal noting improvements and breakthroughs. Find enjoyable ways to practice. If you love cooking, watch English cooking shows. If you enjoy sports, listen to English sports commentary. Connect with other English learners online for mutual support and encouragement. Remember your why, the reasons you started learning English, and visualize achieving your goals. Most importantly, focus on progress, not perfection. Every day you practice, you're building stronger neural pathways for automatic English speech.
That's inspiring advice. Rachel, what role does exposure to different English accents and speaking styles play in developing automatic speech?
Exposure to variety is extremely important. English is spoken differently around the world. British, American, Australian, Indian, and many other varieties all have different accents, vocabulary, and expressions. The more variety you hear, the more flexible and automatic your comprehension and production become. However, I recommend starting with one accent until you develop basic automaticity, then gradually expanding. Choose the accent most relevant to your goals. If you plan to work in America, focus on American English first. Once you have a solid foundation, expose yourself to different accents through movies, podcasts, and international news. This prepares you for real-world communication where you'll encounter many different English speakers.
That's practical advice about choosing one accent first. Rachel, how important is it to have a conversation partner or language exchange?
Having conversation partners is extremely valuable, but it's not absolutely essential, especially in the beginning stages. Early automatic speech development can happen through solo practice with the techniques we've discussed. However, conversation partners become more important as you advance because they provide unpredictable responses that challenge your automatic speech patterns. They also give you practice with turn-taking, interruptions, and clarifications that are part of natural conversation. If you can't find local conversation partners, online language exchanges, video chat platforms, and even chatbots can provide valuable interaction practice. The key is starting conversations when you have some basic automatic responses ready, so you can participate confidently rather than struggling to keep up.
That makes sense about building some foundation first. Rachel, what are some common mistakes learners make when trying to develop automatic speech?
Several common mistakes can slow progress significantly. First, many learners focus too much on studying about English rather than actually practicing speaking. Reading grammar books doesn't develop automatic speech, speaking practice does. Second, perfectionism paralyzes many students. They won't speak until they're sure it's correct. But automatic speech requires making mistakes and self correcting. Third, practicing only formal or textbook English doesn't prepare you for real conversation. Include casual conversational English in your practice. Fourth, not getting enough repetition. Hearing or saying something once isn't enough for automaticity. Finally, comparing yourself to others instead of tracking your own progress can be discouraging and demotivating.
Those are important mistakes to avoid. Rachel, how can technology help in developing automatic English speech?
Technology offers amazing tools for developing automatic speech. Speech recognition apps can help you practice pronunciation and get immediate feedback. Language learning apps with speaking exercises provide structured practice opportunities. Audiobook apps allow you to control speed and repeat sections for shadowing practice. Voice recording apps help you compare your speech to native speakers. AI chatbots provide conversation practice without human judgment. Podcast apps let you find content at your level and replay sections. Video platforms offer authentic English content with subtitles you can turn on and off. However, remember that technology is a tool. It can't replace consistent practice and real communication attempts.
Technology really has opened up so many possibilities. Rachel, what's your best advice for someone who feels stuck and can't seem to progress beyond slow, translated speech?
This plateau is very common and can be overcome. First, dramatically increase your English input. Listen to English for at least 1 hour daily with content you mostly understand. Second, force yourself to respond quickly in low pressure situations, even if your responses aren't perfect. Set a goal to respond within 3 seconds to common questions. Third, practice stream of consciousness speaking. Set a timer for 2 minutes and speak continuously about any topic without stopping or self correcting. Fourth, identify your most common conversation topics and thoroughly prepare automatic responses for them. Finally, consider that your brain might need more time to process all the input you've been giving it. Sometimes plateaus are followed by sudden breakthroughs. Stay consistent and trust the process.
That's encouraging and specific advice. Rachel, before we finish, what's your most important tip for achieving automatic English speech?
My most important tip is to stop studying English and start living in English as much as possible. Automatic speech develops through massive exposure and practice, not through grammar analysis or vocabulary memorization. Change your phone's language to English, listen to English podcasts during commutes, think in English throughout the day, and speak English to yourself constantly. Treat English as a living language you use for real purposes, not just as a subject you study. When English becomes a natural part of your daily life rather than something you only practice during study time, automatic speech patterns will develop much more quickly. Remember, fluency is a habit, not a talent, and habits develop through consistent repetition in natural contexts.
That's powerful advice about making English a part of daily life. Rachel, thank you so much for sharing these incredible strategies for developing automatic English speech. I think our listeners now have a clear roadmap for moving beyond translation and toward natural fluency.
Thank you, Aurora. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I hope your listeners feel inspired and equipped with practical strategies they can start using immediately. Remember, every native English speaker started as a beginner once. The difference between fluent speakers and beginners isn't talent. It's simply the amount of practice and exposure they've had. You can develop automatic English speech too with patience, consistency, and the right techniques.
And thank you to all our listeners. Remember, developing automatic speech takes time and patience, but it's absolutely achievable for anyone willing to practice consistently. Don't get discouraged by temporary plateaus or mistakes. They're part of the journey. Focus on progress, not perfection, and celebrate every small improvement along the way.
Exactly. Start today by choosing one technique we discussed and committing to practice it daily for just 10 minutes. Whether it's shadowing, thinking in English, or having conversations with yourself, small daily actions will build into automatic speech patterns over time. Your English-speaking future self is waiting for you to take these consistent steps today.
Until next time, this is Aurora from English Learning Conversations. Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and remember that automatic English speech is not just a dream. It's a skill you can develop. Stop thinking so much and start speaking more. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, and may your English flow as naturally as your thoughts.